Now we'll discuss the other element, which is motive. Motive is generally irrelevant in determining whether an act or omission is a tort or not. An act which is lawful cannot become unlawful merely because it is done with evil motive. If an act is prima facie lawful, it would not be rendered unlawful because it was ensured by malicious motive. In Allen versus Flood in 1898, the House of Lords has settled that motive is irrelevant in law torts. In the same way, in Mayor of Bradford Corporation versus Pickles in 1895, the court said that a lawful act does not become unlawful merely because it was done with a bad motive. In the same way, in Town Area Committee versus Prabhu Dayal in 1975, the Allahabad High Court held that the plaintiff can get compensation only if he proves to have suffered injury. So, malice will not make the actor liable to pay damages. So also, good motive will not excuse a person from liability where the act is prima facie a legal injury. In Thomas' case, the defendant was held liable under law tort even having good motive. The matter was trespass into land of the plaintiff. So, our next part of motive is sometimes in certain circumstances, malice may be an essential element and so relevant for the purpose of determining liability, such as in cases of deceit, malicious prosecution, and defamation, so also in cases of conspiracy, interference with trade and contractual relations. Malice is classified into malice in fact and malice in law. Malice in fact means express or actual malice, which is an act done with ill will towards an individual. It constitutes ill will, hatred, enmity against a person, a wrongful act done intentionally without any just cause or excuse. On the other hand, malice in law or legal malice, as in law tort, the act is impliedly malicious on account of its being a legal wrongful act. So, it constitutes two things: the intentional doing of a wrongful act without just cause or excuse. Second one, an action determined by motive, act done intentionally with wrong and improper motive which law disapproves. So, a wrongful act is not converted into lawful act. A wrongful act is not converted into lawful act by good motive, because a general rule, motive is not relevant to determine a person's liability in law of tort. A lawful act does not become wrongful because of a bad motive as malice. So, here we found that motive is also irrelevant in case of law of tort, as it was decided in those above cases like Allen versus Flood and Mayor of Bradford versus Pickles. So also the famous Thomas case where we found that motive is irrelevant, whether it is good motive or bad motive, behind an action which is liable in tort. In the same way, the very action of a defendant or a plaintiff regarding malice or malicious omission of any act which causes injury, whether this is malice either in fact or malice in law. So, it is clearly expressed that even if an act is done with good motive, even then, if it is not causing injury, then it is not liable. So, only thing we found behind those mental elements of intention and motive is that a wrongful act would not be lawful with good motive, and a lawful act with a bad motive could be wrongful in these circumstances, that if it causes any injury or any loss to the person and property of the plaintiff. So, this is how these two mental elements are discussed regarding to determine liability of a person in tort.